Alright guys, so this is Mr. Grimslin here. Today we're talking about the foundations of Greek government. So kind of the basic structures that the Greeks used to govern themselves and also some of the different types of government. So the first one we're going to look at is monarchy, which we should all be familiar with by now, which means monarchy means rule by one person, usually the king. And typically this is a hereditary thing where the king passes on the kingship to his son and his son's son, and so on and so forth. Many of the rulers claim divine right. We've seen this before, meaning the rulers, the kings, have permission from the gods to rule, and that's kind of where they get their power from. We see monarchy for the most part in Greece by the time we get to about 2000 BCE. Remember when we say the Mycenaeans, we mean the first Greeks. So early on, it's going to be monarchy for the Mycenaeans. Next up, we have aristocracy, which is a different type of government. It means rule by nobility, and the nobility basically means kind of like the rich landowners. So all the rich landowners kind of get together and they make the decisions themselves. This is obviously hereditary. Aristocracy will stay in the family. Rich families will continue to have power and wealth, so they'll use that to kind of rule. And we'll see this in Athens before they turn to democracy, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They are mostly an aristocracy. So the other one that's kind of like aristocracy, but it's a little bit different, it's called oligarchy. And we'll see this in Sparta, but it basically means a rule by a small group of citizens, usually based on wealth or ability, or sometimes military ability. So, whereas the nobility, aristocracy is all about the nobility and kind of controlling land and also wealth. Oligarchy is usually based on wealth and ability or military control. So oligarchy. We'll see this in Sparta by about 500 BCE. And then the last one that we all are familiar with is democracy, which means the citizens of each city-state will get together and they'll vote on things, and the majority rule will be what they go with. So whatever the majority decides, the majority of citizens decide, that's what will be in place. That's the system that they'll go with. And we'll see this in Athens by about 500 BCE. And the key thing with democracy is to make sure you know that it's the rule by citizens. So the citizens have the right to vote, but typically during this time period, the only people who are citizens are kind of white males who own land. So make sure you don't confuse democracy in this time period with democracy in our society, where women can vote and everyone has a vote as long as you're born here. In ancient Greece, the only way you voted, the only way you were a citizen, is if you were basically a white male who was born in the city. So basic political structures. The Greek city-state, we've talked about city-states before, they call it the polis. So Greek city-state is called a polis. That's a good word to know. City-states control. So city-states will control the city and the surrounding area. We know that the city-state is also known as the polis. And the other important word to know is acropolis, which means kind of a fortified hilltop where citizens met to discuss the government. So this picture right here kind of shows you an acropolis. That's kind of the fortified hilltop. You see the walls, you see the buildings. This is kind of where the citizens of a city-state would come together and kind of make decisions. So that last part, I kind of mentioned this briefly. Citizens typically in Greece, are only free adult males. So any free adult males who have been born in the city and have political rights, they have the responsibility to participate in government. So it's not women, it's not slaves. Only the free adult males are the ones who are citizens in Greece. That being said, in Sparta, women typically had more freedoms than in other city-states. Just because of the culture, they respected women a little more, because women were expected to raise kind of strong men, and it was very important that they did that job. So Spartan women have a little bit more freedom than other city-states, but we'll talk about that when we talk about Athens and Sparta. So just know that women and slaves typically don't have any political rights, whereas the free adult males typically have political rights in Greece.